The Galactic combat arena on Station Nexus Prime buzzed with anticipation. Well, buzzed might be the wrong word when half the audience communicated through bioluminescent patches and the other half via subsonic vibrations that made my exoskeleton itch. But you get the idea. Commander Vex-Tanol adjusted his ceremonial combat clause for what had to be the 20th time in the past 5 minutes. The Kytherian warrior stood 8 feet tall, his obsidian carapace gleaming under the arena lights like polished death itself. 4 arms, each ending in razor-sharp talons that could slice through reinforced titanium, twitched with barely contained excitement. "This will be over in seconds," he rumbled to his entourage, mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his species. "The human female doesn't even have proper combat appendages. Look at those pathetic, soft digits she calls hands." I had to admit, from where I floated in the observation bubble, Lieutenant Maya Torres did look, well, underwhelming. The human woman stood barely 6 feet tall, her skin that peculiar peachy pink color their species favored, wearing nothing but standard-issue combat fatigues and boots. No armor, no weapons, no cybernetic enhancements. Just flesh and bone and that infuriating human smile. "Attention, beings of all classifications." The announcer's voice boomed through the translation matrix, causing a few of the more sensitive species to cover their auditory organs. Today's exhibition match features Commander Vex-Tanol, undefeated champion of 17 sectors, against the human representative, Lieutenant Maya Torres. The crowd erupted. Cheers, screeches, harmonic resonance patterns, and what I'm pretty sure was interpretive dance from the crystalline entities in Section 12. Everyone loves a good spectacle, especially when it involves watching a Deathworlder get their comeuppance. Vex-Tanol raised all 4 arms, basking in the adoration. "Behold," he bellowed, his voice carrying even without amplification. "The mighty human warrior. Tell me, little soft thing, do you even know how to use those ridiculous appendages you call hands? Perhaps I should give you a head start. Maybe, oh, I don't know, 30 seconds? Maya's smile widened. She flexed her fingers, each digit moving independently with a precision that made my optical sensors twitch. 30 seconds? That's awfully generous of you, Commander. Though I have to ask. She paused, tilting her head in that unervingly casual way humans did when they were about to say something devastating. Do you always talk this much before you fight, or are you just nervous? The arena fell silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to pause. Vex-Tanol's carapace darkened, a clear sign of rising fury among his kind. Nervous? I have crushed the bones of creatures twice your size. I have torn through the finest combat mechs the galaxy could produce. I am the apex predator of 17 systems. Sure, Maya said, bouncing slightly on her toes. Very impressive resume. Quick question though, when was the last time any of those creatures fought back? Oh, this human had a death wish. The match officiator, a nervous-looking Altarian with more eyes than sense, scuttled to the center of the arena. Combatants, prepare for engagement. Rules are simple, no lethal weapons, no permanent maiming, match ends when one participant yields or is rendered unconscious. Combat begins in 3, 2, 1. Engage. Vex-Tanol moved like liquid death. All that size and bulk meant nothing when you could accelerate from 0 to bone-crushing velocity in the span of a heartbeat. His 4 arms spread wide, talons gleaming, ready to pin the human and end this embarrassing display. Maya didn't dodge. Instead, she did something that made every military expert in the audience question their understanding of combat physics. She stepped forward, not backward. Not to the side. Forward. Directly into the path of 8 razor-sharp talons moving fast enough to punch through armor plating. Time seemed to slow as Vex-Tanol's confused expression registered the fact that his prey wasn't behaving according to any known survival protocol. His momentum carried him forward, but now he was too close, his attack pattern disrupted by Maya's impossible decision to advance into certain death. That's when she moved. Maya's right hand shot up, not to block or deflect, but to grab. Her fingers wrapped around Vex-Tanol's leading wrist with a grip that made the Kytherian commander's eyes widen in shock. Before he could process what was happening, her left hand joined the party, seizing his second arm. "Here's the thing about humans," Maya said conversationally, even as she twisted her entire body into the motion. "We're not just tool users. We are tools." What happened next would be replayed in slow motion on sports networks across 17 systems for the next standard galactic year. Maya's grip tightened, and Vex-Tanol's expression shifted from confidence to confusion to something approaching terror. The human's muscles, those deceptively simple bundles of protein and determination, engaged with a precision that spoke to millions of years of evolution specifically designed for one purpose, gripping things that didn't want to be gripped. Vex-Tanol tried to pull back. His superior size and strength should have made it effortless. Should have. Instead, he found himself locked in place by 10 small, soft fingers that apparently had been designed by some sadistic deity with a sense of irony. "Impossible," he grunted, straining against her hold. "You're barely half my mass." "Mass doesn't matter," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the forces involved. "Leverage does. And humans? We've got the best leverage in the galaxy, thanks to these things you've been mocking." She held up her free hand, wiggling her fingers. Each digit moved independently, creating a complex pattern that somehow managed to be both threatening and educational. 27 bones, 34 muscles, and over 100 ligaments per hand, she continued, as if she were giving a lecture instead of being locked in mortal combat. Plus opposing thumbs that let us manipulate objects with precision you can't even comprehend. Your talons are impressive, Commander, but they're basically just fancy knives attached to your arms. These? She squeezed tighter, and Vex-Tanol's carapace actually began to crack. These are engineering marvels. The crowd was going absolutely insane. Beings who had placed bets on a quick Kytherian victory were suddenly reconsidering their understanding of human physiology. The commentary box erupted in 17 different languages as experts tried to explain how a creature with no natural weapons was systematically dismantling one of the galaxy's most feared predators. Vex-Tanol's free arms swung wildly, trying to reach Maya's position, but she had positioned herself perfectly. Too close for his primary weapons, too low for his secondary strikes, locked in a position that turned his size advantage into a liability. "Let go," he roared, desperation creeping into his voice. "Oh, I will," Maya assured him. "Right after you learn something important about Deathworlders." With a movement too fast for most of the audience to follow, Maya shifted her grip. Instead of holding Vex-Tanol's wrists, her hands moved to his fingers. Specifically, to the joints where his talons connected to his hands. "You see, Commander, the thing about precision grips is that they work both ways. We can hold things gently." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire arena. "Or we can apply pressure exactly where it hurts the most." Vex-Tanol's scream of pain cut through every translation matrix in the building. The sound was unlike anything I'd ever heard, a combination of shock, agony, and the sudden, terrible understanding that he had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of his opponent. Maya hadn't just grabbed him. She had identified the weakest points in his anatomy and applied pressure with surgical precision. "Yield," she said simply. "Never." Vex-Tanol snarled, though his voice cracked with pain. Maya shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both regret and determination. "Your choice." The pressure increased. Not gradually, but in sharp, calculated increments that spoke to an understanding of anatomy that went beyond mere instinct. This wasn't random violence. This was applied engineering, using the human hand as a precision instrument designed to exploit the specific weaknesses of Kytherian physiology. The crowd held its collective breath as Vex-Tanol's struggles became more frantic, then gradually weaker. His carapace, designed to withstand energy weapons and kinetic impacts, proved surprisingly vulnerable to the sustained, focused pressure of human finger strength applied at exactly the right angles. "Last chance," Maya offered. "I really don't want to explain to your medical team why your primary combat appendages need reconstructive surgery. For a moment, pride warred with pragmatism in Vex-Tanol's compound eyes. Pride lost. I yield, he gasped. Maya released him immediately, stepping back with her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. Vex-Tanol collapsed to his knees, cradling his hands and staring at the human with a mixture of awe and terror. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate classification, the announcer's voice cracked with disbelief, we have a winner. Lieutenant Maya Torres has defeated Commander Vex-Tanol in the most unexpected victory in arena history. The crowd exploded again, but this time the tone was different. This wasn't the bloodthirsty excitement of watching a guaranteed slaughter. This was the genuine amazement of witnessing something that shouldn't have been possible. Maya walked over to where Vex-Tanol knelt, extending one of her supposedly inadequate hands toward him. "Good match, Commander," she said. "Your reputation for speed and power is well deserved. You just made one small mistake." Vex-Tanol looked up at her, his expression unreadable behind his alien features. "What mistake?" Maya's smile returned, but now it carried a weight that made every predator species in the audience suddenly remember why humans were classified as Deathworlders in the first place. "You assumed that just because we don't have claws or fangs or armor plating, we're not dangerous," she said. "But the thing about humans, Commander, is that we don't need natural weapons. We turned our entire bodies into weapons, and our hands?" She wiggled her fingers again. "Our hands are the control systems." As medical teams rushed onto the arena floor and Maya waved to the still cheering crowd, I found myself reconsidering everything I thought I knew about human combat capabilities, and wondering what other surprises the Deathworlders had in store for us. The aftermath of Maya's victory sent ripples through the galactic combat community faster than a hyperspace transmission. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting footage of the match, and suddenly everyone was an expert on human physiology. I floated in the station's observation lounge, watching the chaos unfold through the massive viewport. Ships from a dozen different species had arrived, their crews desperate to witness more human combat demonstrations. The betting pools had exploded into complete anarchy as oddsmakers tried to recalculate the combat potential of a species they'd collectively dismissed as soft mammals with decent tool skills. Fascinating, isn't it? I spun around, my anti-grav unit humming with the sudden movement. Maya Torres stood behind me, looking remarkably relaxed for someone who had just turned the combat meta on its head. She held what appeared to be a steaming cup of some human beverage, the steam curling up in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. "Lieutenant Torres," I managed, my translation matrix struggling with the proper honorifics. "That was educational." She laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both musical and slightly predatory. "Educational. I like that. Most people are using words like impossible and terrifying." One Regellian ambassador actually fainted when they showed the slow-motion replay of the grip strength measurements. Can you blame them? I gestured toward the viewport, where yet another ship was docking. "You fundamentally altered how 17 species view human combat capability. The Kytherian High Command is demanding an immediate review of their military protocols." "Good," Maya said, taking a sip of her beverage. "Maybe now they'll think twice before challenging random humans to friendly combat matches. Do you know how many times this month someone's tried to prove their superiority by fighting one of us? It's getting ridiculous." She moved to stand beside me at the viewport, and I found myself studying her profile. From this angle, she looked even more deceptively harmless. No visible weapons, no threatening postures, just a relatively small biped with soft skin and an easy smile. The fact that those same hands had just systematically dismantled an apex predator seemed almost impossible. "Tell me something," I said, curiosity overriding my usual diplomatic caution. "Was that performance calculated? The way you positioned yourself, the pressure points you targeted, that level of precision doesn't happen by accident." Maya's smile widened. "You want to know if I plan to humiliate Commander Vex-Tanol specifically, or if I'm just naturally good at exploiting the weaknesses of overconfident aliens?" "Both, I suppose." Well, she said, settling into one of the lounge chairs with fluid grace, the honest answer is that every human learns basic anatomy and leverage principles. It's part of our standard education, right alongside mathematics and language. We call it physical education, but it's really combat preparation disguised as health maintenance. I felt a chill run through my atmospheric processing unit. You're saying all humans receive combat training? From childhood, Maya confirmed cheerfully. We teach our young to throw objects with accuracy, to grapple with each other for sport, to understand how joints work and where pressure can be applied. We tell them it's for fun and fitness, but really, we're creating a species-wide combat capability that most civilizations don't even recognize. The implications hit me like a meteor strike. Every human is essentially a trained warrior. Oh, it's better than that, Maya said, her eyes sparkling with something that might have been mischief or malevolence. Every human is a trained warrior who's been taught to hide their capabilities behind a facade of harmlessness. We've weaponized appearing weak. Before I could process this revelation fully, the lounge's communication system crackled to life. Lieutenant Torres, please report to Combat Arena Bay 7. You have visitors. Maya sighed, finishing her beverage in one long gulp. And here we go. Want to watch round 2? I have a feeling this is going to get interesting. Against my better judgment, I found myself following her through the station's corridors. The crowds parted before us, beings who had dismissed humans hours ago now stepping aside with something approaching reverence. Or fear. Possibly both. Arena Bay 7 was smaller than the main combat venue, designed for private matches and training sessions. As we entered, I counted at least 30 beings from various species, all wearing military insignia or sporting the kind of cybernetic enhancements that screamed professional combatant. At the center of the group stood General Krex-Noth, a Vorthan war leader whose reputation made Vex-Tanol look like a civilian. Standing nearly 10 feet tall, with 6 arms and a carapace that had been reinforced with military-grade armor plating, he represented the pinnacle of galactic military evolution. His species had conquered 12 systems through superior combat doctrine and sheer physical dominance. Ah, he rumbled as Maya approached, the famous human arrives. I trust you're prepared for a real challenge this time, Softskin. Maya stopped about 20 feet away, hands clasped behind her back in a posture that managed to look both casual and ready. General Krex-Noth, I presume? I've read about your campaigns. Very impressive work on the Centauri front. Flattery will not save you here, Deathworlder, the general replied, his 6 arms spreading wide in an intimidation display that had reportedly caused entire enemy battalions to surrender. Your little trick with the Kytherian was amusing, but I am not some arena show-off. I am a professional soldier, and I do not underestimate my enemies. No, Maya agreed, I don't think you do. Which makes this much more interesting. She began to walk in a slow circle around the general, her movements fluid and unhurried. The assembled crowd tracked her progress like predators watching prey, but something about her casual confidence suggested the roles might be reversed. You know what's fascinating about professional soldiers? Maya asked conversationally. They spend so much time training to fight other professional soldiers that they sometimes forget the most dangerous opponents are the ones who don't fight fair. General Krex-Noth rotated to keep her in sight, his multiple arms shifting position with practiced precision. Honor in combat is what separates warriors from animals. Honor, Maya repeated, as if tasting the word. That's a luxury we can't afford on Earth, General. When you're from a death world, survival trumps honor every single time. Without warning, she moved, but not toward the general. Instead, Maya dropped to the ground, rolled sideways, and came up holding something she'd snatched from the arena floor. A maintenance tool, probably dropped by the cleaning crew. Nothing fancy, just a simple molecular wrench about 18 inches long. Tool user. General Krex-Noth bellowed, his voice filled with outrage. This is supposed to be unarmed combat. Technically, Maya said, hefting the wrench with a grip that turned the simple tool into something far more threatening. I am unarmed. This isn't a weapon, it's an improvised force multiplier. There's a difference. She was right, of course. The combat rules specifically prohibited manufactured weapons, but said nothing about environmental advantages. Still, the way she held that wrench, the casual competence in her stance, suggested this wasn't improvisation so much as applying a broader tactical philosophy. General Krex-Noth charged, all 6 arms working in perfect coordination to create an attack pattern that should have been impossible to counter. Maya waited until the last possible second, then did something that made my optical processors struggle to track the motion. She threw the wrench, not at the general's head or center mass, where his armor was strongest. Instead, she hurled it at his leading foot, the precise point where his charge momentum was focused. The tool struck with a resounding clang, and suddenly the unstoppable Vorthan war machine was stumbling, his perfect attack formation disrupted by a 20-credit maintenance implement. Maya was already moving again, staying low, using the general's own size against him. As he tried to recover his balance, she slipped inside his guard, her hands finding purchase on his armor plating. The thing about fighting Deathworlders, she said, her voice steady despite the fact that she was now grappling with a creature that outweighed her by at least 400 pounds, is that we don't just adapt to our environment. We adapt our environment to us. Before anyone could parse what she meant by that, Maya demonstrated. Instead of trying to overpower the general directly, she used his armor against him. Her fingers found the connection points where his cybernetic enhancements met his natural carapace, and she began to apply pressure in ways that the armor's designers had never anticipated. Impossible, General Krex-Noth grunted, trying to shake her off. My armor is rated against forces 10 times greater than your species' maximum output. Against distributed force, sure, Maya replied. But what about concentrated pressure applied at the exact stress points where your equipment connects to your biology? Did your engineers account for that? The answer, based on the general's expression of dawning horror, was no. Maya's human hands, those miraculous instruments of precision and adaptability, found every weak point in what was supposed to be an invincible combat system. She wasn't trying to break through the armor, she was using the armor's own design against it, applying pressure where it would transfer directly to the vulnerable biological systems underneath. This is cheating, one of the observers muttered. This is survival, Maya corrected, not even breathing hard despite maintaining holds that should have been impossible for her species. On Earth, if you're not willing to use every advantage available, you don't get to pass on your genes. We've been bred by our environment to be creative problem solvers, not honorable duelists. General Krex-Noth's struggles were becoming increasingly frantic. His 6 arms, each theoretically capable of crushing a human torso, couldn't find purchase on an opponent who refused to engage in conventional combat. Maya flowed around his attacks like water, always staying just out of reach while maintaining pressure on the points where his armor created vulnerability instead of protection. You want to know the real secret of human combat capability? Maya asked, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena. It's not our strength or our speed or our natural weapons. It's our refusal to accept that there's only one way to win a fight. With a final, precise application of pressure that made several of the military observers wince in sympathy, General Krex-Noth's armor systems began to overload. Warning lights flashed across his carapace as his own equipment turned against him. I yield, he gasped, his voice distorted by his failing translation matrix. I yield, Deathworlder. Maya released him immediately, stepping back with her hands raised in the same peaceful gesture she'd used with Vex-Tanol. But this time, the watching crowd didn't cheer. They stared in absolute silence, processing the fact that their understanding of combat effectiveness had just been rewritten again. Honorable match, General, Maya said formally. Your reputation for tactical awareness is well deserved. You adapted to my unorthodox approach faster than most would have. General Krex-Noth struggled to his feet, his armor systems slowly coming back online. He looked at Maya with an expression that mixed respect with something approaching existential dread. Tell me, human, he said quietly, how many of your species fight like this? Maya's smile returned, but now it carried a weight that made every military professional in the room suddenly reconsider their species' strategic assessments. "General," she said, "I'm a maintenance engineer. I fix broken equipment for a living. If you want to see how our actual combat specialists fight," she let the implication hang in the air like a sword hanging over all of galactic civilization. "Well, I'm sure that would be educational too." As the crowd dispersed in stunned silence and Maya collected her gear, I found myself wondering what other surprises humanity had in store for the galaxy. And whether the rest of us were prepared for a species that had turned survival itself into an art form. The age of underestimating humans, I realized, was over. The question now was what would replace it.